Hello, all. So today we're going to talk about the Islamic world up until the year 1450 CE. This is still period 3. And let's just go over some quick facts about Islam first. It today is the fastest growing religion in the world. It is monotheistic. It is rooted in the faith of one God named Allah, and that is taught through the teachings of several prophets. And the belief is that Muhammad, who lived from 570 to 632 CE, was the last of those prophets. Within 1 century of Muhammad's death, Islam had spread from Persia all the way to Spain. So very, very rapid spread after its founding. And Islam is still the predominant religion in Arab countries of the Middle East, as well as North Africa, and non-Arab countries such as Iran, Pakistan, as well as Indonesia. Let's talk about the early pre-Islamic cultures first. The people who lived on the Arabian Peninsula before Islam was founded were Bedouins. If you remember from period 1, Bedouin peoples are nomadic, they're tribal, and they're polytheistic peoples. Each clan is ruled by a sheikh. A sheikh is sort of like a priest, so somewhat of a theocracy. And the sheikhs ruled with the consent of a tribal council. And sheikhs also often had affiliations with surrounding clans and tribes. So you can see them as diplomatic in that sense. And their relationships with other clans and tribes shaped the sheikh's decisions. Also, in the Bedouin culture, polygyny was legal. That's the practice of taking multiple wives. That is not to be mistaken with polygamy with an M, which is where both husband and wife can take multiple spouses. Early religions, so before Islam, the Bedouin people were technically polytheistic, but they did worship one god above all others, and his name was Allah. Each tribe had sacred stones, and out of all those stones, the most revered was a large black stone located at the city of Mecca, which is why Mecca has such significance in Islam. The entire local tribe was part of the religion, and there was no separate class of priests. So, in other words, that social hierarchy that we see in other theocratic societies, like in the Hindu caste system, for example, from period 2, is different from that in that sense. Tribal values emphasized honesty and generosity, and that featured a sense of community that provided continuity when these Bedouin tribes later adapted Islam. The Bedouin economy was largely land trade based via camels. This formed the basis of the economy across the Arabian Peninsula as well as into the surrounding areas. The water trade routes developed over time after the fighting between the Byzantine Empire over here in present-day Turkey and the Sassanid Empire, which was farther north and east. After those two regions stopped fighting with one another, it was easier to trade by sea as well. So there was a significant water trade along both the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea. Now, this increased water trade caused Bedouins to compete with coastal merchants and traders whose wealth was also growing. So, let's link the teachings of Islam to the other Abrahamic religions which we studied in period 2. So, the line of prophets in Judeo-Christian teachings, well, in Judaic teachings, we would stop here, right? Christian teachings. And then in Muslim teachings, Muhammad was seen as the last of this line of Abrahamic prophets. So let's talk about Muhammad. He was born in 570 CE, and he was of the merchant class. He managed a caravan, which was a very position that could easily result in great wealth. And he marries a rich widow from Mecca, which shows us something about the status of women at this time, because Muhammad's wife inherited her wealth from her late husband, but Muhammad was able to benefit from that wealth when he married her. Now, Muhammad experiences a prophecy in 610 CE. This revelation came from the angel Gabriel in the cave of Hira. This is a picture of that cave, which is still a popular religious destination. And after that initial revelation, he then experienced a series of revelations afterwards. And the people who accepted these teachings that Muhammad told saw Muhammad as a prophet. So thus Islam was born. Once Islam begins, Muhammad comes into conflict with a number of rulers in the area. These rulers remained polytheistic, and Muhammad's new beliefs obviously pose a challenge to the pre-existing leaders' authorities. So Muhammad is driven out of Mecca in 622 CE, and this exodus was referred to as the Hijrah. And when he moves to Medina, he then attracts additional followers. So the story says that before the Hijrah, Muhammad had only attracted about 30 followers. It's really after his expulsion from Mecca and his journey to Medina where Islam spread significantly. So Muslims do not and never did worship Muhammad as a divine. That's significant. Let's go back here. That's significant because this is different from Christianity, let's say, where Jesus was worshipped as a god, right? Muhammad is not seen as a god, only Allah is seen as a god. And the sacred text of the Muslim people is the Quran. You also can see it spelled with a K, K-O-R-A-N, so those spellings are interchangeable. Quran translates into recitation. And, oops, forgot the quote. And after his death, that's when the Quran is compiled. So Islam spreads rapidly both during Muhammad's lifetime as well as about a century afterwards. So you see that it's really reaching from Persia all the way to Spain within about a century of his death. So why does Islam spread so quickly? One of the reasons why, it was actually environmental factors. So there was a lot of drought on the Arabian Peninsula, and this causes traders to extend their trade routes to new locations. And many of these traders had converted to Islam, and as they move farther and farther away from the Arabian Peninsula, they take the teachings of Islam with them. And this faith carries on to others as they continue to move. Another reason why Islam spread so fast was because of military conquest. Now, in these early years of Islam, no one who was conquered was forced to convert to Islam, but many did anyway. And so this shows us that there was a significant degree of tolerance in early Islam. Also, the people who were conquered could pay a tax to the caliphate, and that would get them out of doing military service. So there was a degree of religious tolerance when these Islamic empires spread. There is a strong allegiance between Arab peoples and Islam, but as I'll discuss later, Islam is not limited to the Arab world anymore. Also, new followers were attracted to the egalitarian nature of Islam because there was less of a distinction between classes. So the core beliefs of Islam are similar to Judeo-Christian teachings. So first off, obviously, this is a monotheistic faith. This is also coming from the same area as the other two major monotheistic religions. So they all originate roughly in the same place in the Middle East. They all honor the Abrahamic prophets. And the people of Islam believe that Jews and Christians are other people of the book. So their texts are rooted in the same stories. Also, Allah is not represented as an idol. So this is different from Christianity, where we'll often see human portrayals of God or Jesus or Mary. In Islam, that is forbidden. So this is a portrayal of Allah. It's not a human-like characteristic. Also, the Muslims believe in the idea that one can be saved, right? So the belief in salvation, and they also believe in an afterlife. And the Muslims believe that they must submit themselves to the will of Allah, who they believe to be the one true God. And a belief in the Quran as a sacred book provided guidance and laws for the followers of Islam. So, the last thing we'll do in this video is talk about the 5 pillars of Islam, the core beliefs. These are important. You don't have to know the Arabic names, but you should definitely know what each of these 5 pillars are. So the first one is that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, or the Shahada. The second one is the Salat, which is the call to pray 5 times a day. And I just wanted to take a second to actually play a video of a Salat. It's kind of cool. Oh, there's an ad. So I'll talk over that. Whoopsies. So in any case, this also requires one to face the direction of Mecca. And we can tune back in now. Okay, so we'll move on from here. Again, this prayer calls to face Mecca. And the person who does this call to prayer is called a muezzin. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. And this is the person who calls people to prayer. And the tower that they stand on for the call to prayer is called a minaret. Okay, the third pillar is called the Zakat, or almsgiving, right? So it calls for people to give to the poor. Then there is the Sawm, or the fasting pillar. This takes place during the holy month of Ramadan. And this is breaking fast. Okay, this is the celebration of the end of Ramadan. Then the fifth pillar is the Hajj, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca. This must be done at least once in a Muslim's lifetime. And it's significant because millions of Muslims do this pilgrimage to Mecca every year. And it doesn't matter where you live. Many people who are Muslim who live in the United States, for example, are still obligated to make this pilgrimage. This is an image of many people gathering by the sacred stone in Mecca. The pilgrimage, oh, I said it before, but just so you know, this is called the Hajj. That is actually a name that you should be familiar with, I'd say. Now, one of the most controversial ideas in Islam is the concept of a jihad, so I wanted to talk about that for a moment. So the jihad is the inner struggle to preserve Allah's teachings and to improve both oneself and society. Now, in modern times, this is interpreted as a requirement to go to war to preserve and extend Islam. So this is one of the sources of Islamophobia that we see in the United States today. And I don't want to get political about this by any means, but I do want to emphasize that this is something that is misunderstood among many people that have an Islamic diasporic population. In other words, people who move, people who are Muslim who move to non-Muslim areas oftentimes experience this misunderstanding of a jihad. Now, this is not to say that there aren't areas that do interpret jihad in a violent way, but I just really want to be careful about the way we think about this. Okay, the Dar al-Islam refers to the entire Muslim community, so you will see that word. That's important to be familiar with that. And lastly, I want to talk about Sharia law, and then we'll stop and start with a new video. So Sharia law is the expectation of morality and honesty. This bans gambling, eating pork, and drinking alcohol. And in some circumstances, polygamy was prohibited, but Muhammad had 4 wives, and so there are some Muslim societies that do still allow polygamy. Muslims cautioned not to enslave other Muslims, Christians, or Jews. So this is significant because you see, again, that respect towards the people of the book. And there are still many countries today that base their laws on Sharia, including Iran, parts of Nigeria, Afghanistan, Libya, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and Yemen. So this map here shows us different areas that implement Sharia law. All right, so let's stop and we'll pick up with the next slides, which are going to talk about the political spread of Islam. So stay tuned and thanks.